The Theory of Knowledge, an Islamic Perspective by Ayatollah Murtuda Mutahhari. Chapter 8. True Knowledge. We shall embark on the discussion of the basis, milak, and criterion, mi'yar, for knowledge, an issue which has two parts, the discussion on the basis of knowledge and the discussion on the criterion for knowledge. We said in the previous session that man has cases in his knowledge whose error he can detect, saying that his knowledge is incorrect, erroneous, or flawed. The following is an example of particular, juz'i, things. You have a friend, for example, with whom you associate for some time and you believe that he is a good person, truthful, faithful, devoted, and reliable. And you tell the same story to anyone who asks you about him. Later, after traveling with him, marrying him, or jointly establishing a trading company, your opinion about him suddenly changes and you have no doubt that you were mistaken about your former opinion about him. Now you tell people, I have been acquainted with this person and now I realize I was in my opinion wrong about him. He is actually a bad person. This is a particular example. In scientific questions, there are many instances when the experts of one field discovers, as he would claim, a law of nature, and this claim is accepted for decades or even centuries. But after some time, others will realize that their predecessors' knowledge concerning a certain aspect of nature was actually wrong, and the truth was something else. It is here that the question of truth in knowledge is raised, for it becomes clear that knowledge is of two types, knowledge which is truth, and knowledge which is a mistake. As the subject reaches this point, two questions are posed. Number one, what is the definition of truth and its opposite, mistake? When we say that a piece of knowledge is truth, how do we define truth? Number two, after defining truth in whatever way we do so, what is the criterion for distinguishing the truthfulness of knowledge from its being a mistake? What is the criterion for distinguishing true knowledge from wrong knowledge? What can serve as a litmus test that a certain knowledge is truth or otherwise? The definition of truth according to classical scholars and the objections to it. Let us tackle the first issue, that is, the definition of truth. The classical scholars and philosophers define the truthfulness of a certain piece of knowledge in this manner. Knowledge is either consistent or inconsistent with the reality or the essence of a thing. In other words, our mind or thinking is either concordant or discordant with the actual. True knowledge is that which is conformity with reality. In other words, it is the mentality which is in conformity with actuality, or the way of thinking which is in accord with the external reality. The classical scholars and philosophers had no doubt in this definition, and they themselves had discussed and refuted the objections to it. Among the ideas that emerged in the modern age are those which pertain to the definition of truth. Is the truth, that is, the true and correct knowledge, that which is consistent with reality, or the mentality which is in accord with the actual? It is said, no, this is a wrong definition. It can be true in some cases, but not all cases. For instance, in sensory, natural, and empirical issues, it can be said, more or less, that this definition is applicable. As an example, when it is said that in medicine that such and such thing causes cancer, we can say that this thinking is either consistent with reality or not. That is, if the said thing causes cancer in the objective world, then this thinking is consistent with reality, and if it does not bring about cancer, then this thinking is false. But not all pieces of knowledge are like that. It is said that this definition is not true in mathematics. You state a set of laws in this field. For example, the ratio of a circle to its diameter is such and such number, or a straight line has such and such characteristic. The circle as it exists in the mathematician's mind does not exist in nature at all. That is, an enclosed curve with all its points equidistant from the central point does not exist in nature. This is only a hypothesis in our minds. So, if we say that true or correct knowledge is that which is in conformity with reality, it is subjective to say that it is indeed consistent with the actual. This notion cannot include mathematics because mathematical laws have no actual representation. They are concepts which are in conformity with the mind itself. The same is true with the issues relevant to the mind itself, such as logical, mental, and psychological matters. In psychology, when you say that every perception you have is influenced by emotional attachment, such a thing does not exist outside of us. What exists is that which exists within us. Thus, to be in conformity with the objective world does not hold water here. Similarly, it is said that to be in conformity with the actual has also no meaning in historical subjects. Why? This is because historical subjects relate to the past, and the past does not exist, and it is basically non-existent. When you say that one thing is consistent with another thing, for example, this hand of mine is consistent with my other hand, both of them must exist so as to have consistency with each other. Historical subjects are subjects which are non-existent. When we say that Nadir Shah formed an army in such and such year, headed toward Isfahan, which was then occupied by the Afghans, fought a battle and defeated them at Murchahurt of Isfahan, all these things were events that happened in the past, and now they are totally non-existent. Since they are non-existent, how can I say whether this narration is true or not? You say they are true because they are in conformity with reality. I say they do not exist in reality. The event is now non-existent. Since they are non-existent, how can I say whether this narration is true or not? You say they are true because they are in conformity with reality. I say they do not exist in reality. The quote-unquote event is now non-existent. More serious than this, it is said that the definition of truth as something in conformity with reality is derived from the notion of fixedness in the universe. That is, it is alleged that this definition was given by those who believed that the universe is fixed and static, but it is also established now that the world is unfixed. Between two moments, it is neither in a single nor uniform state. So, with which thing do you match your knowledge? So long as a thing is not permanent, another thing can never be matched with it. Since the universe has no permanence, the conformity of the mind with the objective reality is pointless. These are a set of objections raised against the definition of truth offered by our classical scholars. And then it is said that due to the existence of these objections, the said definition must be discarded. Are these objections valid or not? Were the classical scholars aware of these objections or not? It is a subject which we will discuss in this session if we have time. Of course, none of these objections is valid and correct. Other definitions of truth. Since their proponents considered these objections valid, they said, we must present another definition of correct knowledge to be correct and truth. What is the definition of truth then? Some said that if only one person is taken into account, truth means any idea in his mind which is compatible with other ideas. That is, if the idea which comes into your mind is compatible with your other ideas and has no contradiction with them, this is truth. But if it negates your other ideas and is incompatible with them, then it is wrong. If we take a group or community into consideration, the definition of truth is as follows. Any idea in a given time which is unanimously accepted by the learned men is truth. If the people of a given period, even if only for a generation or a few years, accept an idea and are all unanimous in their acceptance of it, that idea is truth. Thus, according to the proponents of this definition, the definition of truth is as follows. Truth is any idea upon which the people of a given period have mutual agreement. We argue that if the people in another period came and found a contrary idea, which of the two ideas would be the truth in this case? They say that in their period the truth is something else. At that time, since the people mutually agreed on the said idea, that idea was the truth. Now, since the people think in a different way, their mutually accepted idea is the truth, but not in the sense that the former idea is wrong while the latter is correct, or vice versa. For example, for up to 2,000 years after Ptolemy, astronomers and the Christian clergy believed that the Earth was the center of the universe and that the then known planets revolved around the Earth. And the Sun, though to be the biggest heavenly body in the solar system, and other bodies also revolved around the Earth. Every planet had its rotation. Every 24 hours it completed its rotation, hence day and night. For 2,000 years, scholars in astronomy and other fields held such a belief. For 2,000 years, therefore, the truth was that the sun revolved around the earth. From the time of Copernicus and Galileo, it has been said no, it is the earth which revolves around the sun. So now this is the truth, because the people of the world have accepted it. At that time, the truth was the former, and now the truth is the latter. Auguste Comte also defined true knowledge in this way. Obviously, it is a wrong definition for us to say that at that time that was the truth, and today this is the truth, and tomorrow, if the people in the future think differently, what they will agree upon is the truth. Others define true knowledge in a different way, by saying that true knowledge is that which is beneficial to humanity. The classical scholars, in this case Muslim scholars, distinguished between the truth and the useful, saying that to be the truth, that is, to be in accord with reality, is an issue by itself, while to be useful is another issue. That which is the truth is one thing, and that which is useful is another thing. Now, are these two incompatible or not? Is whatever is the truth useful, and whatever is useful the truth? Or are they different things? The relationship between the truth and the useful in particular and general cases. It is possible for an idea to be wrong, but at the same time useful to mankind. For example, consider an ailing old father who has a favorite young son whom he sent in a faraway country for studies without knowing that his son had actually died recently. Now, telling the truth is harmful to him. It is the truth, yet it is harmful to him. But to tell him that his son is in good shape and busy with his studies is beneficial to his health. Thus, here, the issue of being the truth and that of being useful are separate, although in general issues, to be the truth and to be useful are two issues which are inseparable. In particular cases, however, the truth and the useful, or true and expedient, can be distinguished from each other. In Gulistan, Sa'adi has the following famous story. I heard a king giving orders to kill a prisoner. The helpless fellow began to insult the king on that occasion of despair, with the tongue he had, and to use foul expressions according to the saying, "He who washes his hands of life says whatever he has in his heart. When a man is in despair, his tongue becomes long, and he is like a vanquished cat assailing a dog. In time of need, when flight is no more possible, the hand grasps the point of the sharp sword." When the king asked what he was saying, a good-natured vizier replied from the Holy Quran. He said, "My Lord, he says," and he quoted from Surah Al Imran, verse 134, "Those who suppress their anger and excuse the faults of the people, and surely Allah loves the virtuous." The king, moved with pity, forbore taking his life, but another vizier, the antagonist of the former, said, "Men of our rank ought to speak nothing but the truth in the presence of kings. This fellow has insulted the king and spoken unbecomingly." The king, being displeased with these words, said, "That lie was more acceptable to me than this truth you have uttered, because the former proceeded from a conciliatory disposition, and the latter from a malignity. And wise men have said, a falsehood resulting in conciliation is better than a truth producing trouble. As I have said, in particular cases, sometimes a thing is the truth, but not good, useful, or necessary. Similarly, sometimes a thing is not the truth, but it is useful. The blood of an innocent is not to be shed. If you tell the truth, his blood will be shed, but if you conceal the truth, you will save a life. Thus, in particular cases, to be the truth and to be useful are two separate things. In general cases, to be the truth and to be useful are also two separate issues, with the difference that, in general cases, to be the truth and to be useful are always identical. The Quranic viewpoint regarding the correlativity of the truth and usefulness in general cases. There is a verse in the blessed Surat Al-Ra'd which states the fact that there is compatibility between being true and being useful in general cases, emphasizing that whatever is true is also useful. In this regard, the Quran gives the following example. In Surah Ra'd, verse 17, it states, He sends down water from the sky, whereat the valleys are flooded to the extent of their capacity, and the flood carries along a swelling scum, and from that they smelt in the fire for the purpose of making ornaments or wares. There arises a similar scum. That is how God compares the truth and falsehood. As for the scum, it leaves as dross, and that which profits the people remains in the earth. That is how Allah, or God, draws comparisons. Some say that one should not distinguish between the truth and the useful, for to be the truth essentially means to be useful. You say that to be the truth means to be in accord with reality, and in general cases what is in accord with reality is useful as well. They say, leave this compatible with reality. You say, to be the truth means to be useful. William James, a famous American philosopher and psychologist, had this view in this regard. Third definition of truth. Some others have defined truth in yet another way. This and the next view or definition I will mention are prevalent today. They said, truth and falsehood in the way you define them have essentially no meaning at all. Truth is what comes out as the result of interaction between our sensory perceptions and the external world, that is, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. When our senses are in contact with the external reality, the latter affects our senses, and they also show their own reaction. For example, we look at a person in front of us. Without him, we cannot do so. In broad daylight or in the presence of a lamp, the light which strikes him reflects in our eyes, and an image is formed in our eyes' retina. But our eyes are not only being affected as they also affect others. That is, they also show reaction to themselves. The image recorded in our eyes' retina takes a specific form. Truth is nothing but the effect of the interaction between the objective world and the mental realm. Whatever is the outcome of this interaction is called the truth, and not what is in conformity with reality. We argue that sometimes two persons perceive a thing in two different ways at a given time, and even a single person perceives a thing in two different ways at a given time. For example, when a person who is suffering from jaundice looks at an object, it appears yellow to him. Having normal eyes, I do not see it the way he sees it. It just appears as having another color to me, as well as to most other people. Which one is the truth? They say that both are the truth and neither of them is wrong. Your nerves react to it in a certain way. It is the reaction of your own nerves, so it is the truth. His nerves react to it in a different way. It is also the truth because, after all, it is the effect of his own nerves. If 100 people see an object in 100 different forms, there are 100 different truths here. They say, from where did you get the idea that the truth is absolute? The truth is relative. That is, the truth as far as I am concerned. That is, the truth as far as you are concerned. Something else is the truth as far as another person is concerned, and none of them is wrong. Even for a single person, it is possible to have two relative truths at a given time. Immerse your left hand in water at a temperature of 60 degrees and your right hand in water at a temperature of 0 degrees. Your left hand will get warm and your right hand will get cold. Then immerse your hands together in water at a temperature of 20 degrees. By doing so, your left hand will feel cold while your right hand will feel warm. Now, as far as you are concerned, there are two truths at a given time. Essentially, the truth is nothing but this. So, truth is relative. True knowledge is not absolute for us to ask, what is the true knowledge of such and such? If I say, what can you say about my friend whom I knew before as a good person, but whom I discover now as a bad person? They will say both perceptions are truths. At that time, that is, in the totality of conditions under which you lived and the conditions your friend had, the truth was that he is a good person. And now, with the existing conditions, the truth for you is that he is a bad person. The former is truth as well as the latter. Truth is relative. In the realm of knowledge, absolute thinking must be abandoned. Today you can observe that statements such as the following are so prevalent. Absolute thinking has no meaning. Or, every idea must be construed in a relative sense. Accordingly, the idea of Ptolemy must be assessed in relation to his time. That was the truth as far as Ptolemy and the proponents of his idea were concerned. That is, considering the then existing conditions, they could not have any other idea, and for them the truth was that idea they arrived at. From the time of Copernicus, the conditions were changed and truth for contemporary scholars became something else. When it was said before that there were 4 chemical elements, it was the truth in relation to the people at that time. Today, when it is said that there are over 100 elements, this is the truth in relation to the people at present. If the people at a particular time or place say that there is God, for them the truth is that there is God. And if other people at another time or place say that there is no God, for them the truth is that there is no God. Essentially, the truth is that which we say. This theory is the theory which the materialists of our time usually propagate. Fourth view. There is another view which is more accurate and better than the third theory, and materialists have spent much time expounding this theory. This theory is something which is propagated not only by materialists, but a theory which is also accepted by some non-materialists, such as many theists. And many theists still hold this view, although we do not accept it for reasons I will explain later. Many materialists cling to this theory, saying that the definition of truth is none of these. The definition of truth is as follows: any idea which is confirmed by experiment or action is the truth, and any idea which is not confirmed by experiment or action is not truth. Any hypothesis presented by a scholar that yields a good result in practice is truth because it yields a good result in practice. There was a time when Newton presented a hypothesis called universal gravitation. He expressed the mechanism of the movement of a ball and all bodies on the basis of a formula called the law of universal gravitation. He said that the bodies are such that, and he himself acknowledged that he does not know the truth of this state, that they attract one another, and part of this attraction depends on their mass and distance. The basis of the law of gravitation expounded by Newton was confirmed through experiments done for more than 100 or 200 years. That is, this law served as guide and all experiments confirmed it. So, it was the truth then. Other scientists emerged later and formulated more comprehensive views. The theory of general relativity, which was confirmed by wider experiments, was formulated, and it refuted Newton's laws of universality and replaced it. The former was truth, and so is the latter, because the former was confirmed by experiments at one time, and the latter was confirmed better by experiments of that time. The truth is nothing but what is confirmed by experiment. If tomorrow another theory is to be formulated which will be confirmed by wider experiments which cannot confirm general relativity, that will also be truth, and truer than the present truth, which is general relativity. These people have a set of definitions of true knowledge. I have mentioned 4 basic definitions here. With the addition of the definition presented by the classical scholars, that is, the truth means any idea which is in conformity with reality or the essence of a thing, all in all, we have 5 definitions of the truth for the time being. Now, which of these definitions is correct and which are wrong? Allow me first to tackle our second subtopic, and then if we have the opportunity, we will address this question. We have said that the definition of knowledge, which is the very basis of truth, is one thing, and the criterion for knowledge is another thing. The question is, regardless of our definition of truth, how could we know whether a piece of knowledge is true or not? In this regard, there is a very essential and fundamental difference of opinion between Muslim scholars on one hand and many modern scholars, both theists and materialists, on the other. Muslim scholars believed that the criterion for knowledge is always that of knowledge. That is, knowledge is the criterion for knowledge. It is here that they divided knowledge into evident knowledge and theoretical knowledge. Modern scholars maintain that knowledge is not the basis or criterion for knowledge. Accordingly, action is the basis and criterion for knowledge. That is, any idea or piece of knowledge which can be put into action is the true or real knowledge, and that is the criterion for its being true or real. And if it were impossible to put it into action, two possibilities could be assumed. One possibility is that it would be impossible to put it into action in the sense that mankind cannot implement it. For example, is the universe eternal or not? The universe is already millions or billions of years old, but it is not eternal after all. Regarding the end of the universe or its eternity, similar questions can be formulated and posed. These cannot be put into test or experiment. They are not subject to experiment. That which cannot be experimented cannot be known. Therefore, such questions as well as questions related to theological matters are questions that cannot be known according to these scholars. Another possibility is that it is impossible to put it into action in the sense that its contrary is proven in practice. In this case, it would be false or invalid. It is here that action is specifically the focus of attention. Whether or not action is the criterion for thinking, whether or not action is the key to thinking, and whether or not action contributes to the advancement of thinking. And many of these questions are correct. An accusation against Muslim scholars, ulama. Most people pose this question: is action the criterion for thought? In this regard, some have deviated from the main point and said, those who consider knowledge the criterion for knowledge do not even believe that action is the key to thought. That is, by means of action, an idea can be achieved, because there are two issues involved here. One is that an idea can be acquired through action, and the other is that action is the criterion for an idea's validity. They accused the classical scholars of even denying that an idea can be achieved through action. Of course, I acknowledge that the Greek philosophers had such a great defect, but today the Europeans themselves acknowledge that in Islamic civilization and the Muslim world, through a transformation whose source is the Quran itself, science was rescued from a sheer theoretical dimension and acquired its practical utility. In the applied sciences, the Muslim world is much more advanced or ahead of the Greek civilization. Iqbal of Lahore is one of those who have explained this subject well. Even Bertrand Russell, in his book The Scientific Outlook, that compared to the Greek culture and civilization, the Islamic culture and civilization gave a more practical dimension to science, opening the gate of applied sciences. And this has a story of its own. Although they consider Abu Ali ibn Sina one of the accomplished students of Aristotle and a follower of the Aristotelian school, anyone who closely examines the section on the natural sciences in his Al-Shifa can read many instances where he says, I came to know this fact through my personal experiment, or through my personal experience I found out this point. Is action the key to an idea or its criterion? Thus, that action is the key to an idea for man is very valid, but this does not mean that it is the only key, and for the meantime I do not want to discuss it. There is no doubt that action is one of the main keys to a man's idea, but does it suggest that it is also the basis of validity of his idea? At this point, some insist that action is indeed the only criterion for the correctness or incorrectness of his idea. For example, they say, you say that someone believed that his friend is a good person. Then, when they married, traveled together, or jointly established a trading company, her impression of him was suddenly changed, saying that he is actually a bad person without knowing it before. Was it revealed to her through other than experience and action? So, it is through action that man can test his knowledge, whether it is correct or not. If it is so, then many questions cannot be tested through action. I have said before that all scholars in the world acknowledge today that it is impossible. For example, let us take two things into consideration in which the existence of each of them depends on the prior existence of the other. Such a thing is impossible, for none of them will come into being. Suppose you invite two persons to forge an agreement for cooperation. Mr. A says, I will sign it provided that Mr. B signs it first. Mr. B also says, I will sign it provided that Mr. A signs it first. Given this situation, this agreement can never be forged because Mr. A's signing the agreement depends on Mr. B's signature, and Mr. B's signature, the same depends on Mr. A's signature, and this is impossible. We say that it is improbable, that is, it is near impossible. It is not that it does not exist at present and perhaps it will exist in the future. Rather, it means that it never existed in the past. Neither does it exist in the present, and it will never exist also in the future at all. Can an impossible thing be brought to a laboratory and be tested into practice? There are many other things which are indisputable, but they are mere knowledge. They cannot be examined in a laboratory or a quasi-laboratory, or to be confirmed in practice in any other way, so as to know whether or not they are truths. The relationship of knowledge and action is a multifaceted issue, and in Europe, especially in Marxism, it is of immense value. Among the things for which Marxism must indeed be given merit is that it gives special value to action. God willingly, if I have opportunity, I will compare it with the values given by Islam to action for being the key to an idea, particularly in spiritual matters. Then we will see how interesting the topic really is. Islam does not accept that the only basis and criteria for the validity of an idea is action. It is here that the two schools of thought suddenly part ways on the issue of the criterion for knowledge, while the two are very close to each other on other issues pertaining to action. Now, which one is correct? I will explain it to you in the future sessions, God willingly. And with that being said, may God's salutations be upon Muhammad and his pure progeny. End of chapter 8.